So, is a woman in her 40s harder to love? I recently did a post where I was talking about the emotional changes that are happening to women in their 40s. And I got a lot of feedback from men, right, who were talking about how much difficult their relationships are now that they're in the 40s, because it seems like women in the 40s are just a lot more harder to love. They're a lot of a lot more difficult to deal with. And I just wanted to address this topic today because I think a lot of men are at a loss, and I hear that in my life a lot as well. Where my husband sometimes will get frustrated and say, you're hard to please. What do you want? And the truth of the matter is sometimes we don't know what we want. So I really want to address the men today who have a wife or a partner who's in their 40s. Um, One of the things I want to say is that she's not the same person that she was. Okay, that's the first thing that you need to remember. I think sometimes we expect this woman to be the same woman that we married, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. But the truth of the matter is, a woman in her 40s is not the same woman that you married. And of course, when she changes, it changes the dynamic of the relationship. And if you're not careful, your relationship can be affected. So often wondered why, now that I'm in my 40s, I hear more of couples in their 40s, relationships falling apart, relationships are ending, people are going through divorces. And one of the things that I think is responsible for that is because of the hormonal changes, the emotional changes that are happening in a woman's life. And so when these changes are going on, what I hear a lot of men saying is that it can feel like the women are rejecting them and pushing them away, because at this stage of our lives we may not be interested in intimacy because of obviously the hormonal changes that are happening. We may not feel we want to be as intimate as we used to be. We want to be left alone. And so men can sometimes interpret that as being pushed away. And what can tend to happen is that sometimes men then start to look elsewhere to get their physical and emotional needs met, because they feel that they're not getting what they need at home. And this is a real topic. And I'm talking about situations that I know are going on around people in my own personal life. Okay, so it's such an important topic, because what we don't want is a situation where relationships are falling apart because a woman is changing, because her emotions are changing, because her body is changing, and men don't know what's going on. And often it's seen as a crisis, but it's not really a crisis, it's an awakening, okay? And if we see this as an opportunity for growth, see this as an awakening, couples can then navigate this in a way that doesn't leave them, and their relationship vulnerable. So, I mean, some of the things that can happen with a woman in her 40s is that, she becomes more authentic. So she is no longer pretending. She no longer has the energy to pretend. She no longer has the energy to sugarcoat. She's just being who she is. And this can sometimes come across even in their relationships, where men can feel a bit like, who is this person? Okay, she's much more confident. She knows what she wants and she knows what she deserves. So some of the things that you might have gotten away with when she was in her 20s or 30s, in your 40s, you're not getting away with that, because she's holding you accountable. She's brutally honest. She's taking no nonsense. She's fearless. When you're younger, you might fear, your relationship ending. You might fear how people perceive you. But a woman in her 40s has been there, done that. And she's no longer fearful of being on her own. So at this point, this is why women can actually look men in square in the face and say, fix up or else, and men can feel quite intimidated and even frightened by this. A woman is much more reflective at this stage of her life. She's assessing her life. She's assessing her decisions. She might be going through resentment for missed opportunities and things like that. And sometimes men get blamed for it, right? And so it's important for men to understand that at this stage of a life, a woman, is much more sensitive to her needs being unmet, right? You might have gotten away with forgetting birthdays and anniversaries, or, forgetting to bring her flowers, or forgetting to tell her you love her. At this stage of her life, she knows what she wants, and she's going to be more sensitive when her needs are not being met. A woman is much more sensitive in her 40s when it comes to how she spends her time. So what you will find is that, we become much more fussy about who we hang out with, what we do. And sometimes men can feel like, she's protecting more of her own space, protecting more of her own time. And it can almost feel like, again, I feel pushed away because, she wants that space for herself. So it's a time that can be quite confusing, not just for the woman who's going through these changes, but for the man, who has to love this woman who a lot of the time is confused and torn and doesn't even know what she wants. So I'm going to talk about some of the physical changes that happen, but today really I just want to focus more on how a man can be sensitive to the needs of a woman in her 40s. You know, we might be a lot more irritable, for instance, which means that we might need a bit more time. So trying to argue with a woman who's in a going through an emotional storm, you might not win that fight. That may be the time where you need to kind of step away, let her go through her moment, and then come back and talk about it. It's not the time to take her on. So being able to kind of understand, and I'm not saying you need to let women get away with murder, but it is about choosing to deal with things in a way that's helpful, rather than choosing to deal with things in the way that you think they need to be dealt with. So at this stage of our life, we might be more irritable, less tolerant to pressure or chaos, feeling easily overwhelmed, needing more rest, just not having that energy to be up and about. And just sometimes when my family want to go out, I might say, look, I don't feel like it, you guys go ahead and I'll stay back and rest. And sometimes that can be interpreted as, oh, you don't want to be with a family, and and people might pressure you to do those things, and then you might feel pressured, right? But it is about understanding that sometimes she's not in the mood, and sometimes she just hasn't got the energy. If she wants to be left alone to read a book, sometimes that's the best gift that you can give her. Okay. And at this stage of our lives, because our emotions are already up and about, we might just need a bit more grace. We might just need more gentler communication, right? A bit more empathy, understanding, and that sort of a thing. But I just want to talk about, some of the ways in which how we want to be loved as women changes in our 40s, right? At this stage, I know when I was younger, certainly, I I I was working hard, right? My stance was I can make my own money. I don't need to be looked after. I can do my own thing. But what I found is that as I've gotten to my 40s, right, I'm tired. I'm tired of working hard, and I'm just getting to that age where I just want to be looked after. And I don't know if this is your experience as a woman. If it is, you can certainly share that in the comments. But I find that I'm tired of hustling. I don't have the energy that I had in my 20s and 30s, where I was like, I can make my own money, I can do ABCD. I'm finding that I'm a lot more tired, and I just want to rest. I want to be looked after. Sometimes I find myself actually fantasizing, about being a housewife and not going to work, because I think it's just at that stage of your life where you kind of feel, do you know what? I really just want to be looked after. And how do we want our men to show up during this stage of our lives? Okay. One of the things I know, is that when I talk to a lot of women, in my age group, they want men to lead with maturity and emotional intelligence. Okay. So we're looking for stability. We're looking for leadership. We're looking for a man who knows what he wants. We're looking for a man who can say, I got this, let me deal with this. So you're looking for someone that can take that leadership, because maybe you've been, all your life, you've been running around. At this stage of your life, you just want to take a break and know that somebody is managing, somebody is leading. So what you might find is that women are demanding more from their men to be leaders, demanding for, feeling more frustrated if he's not asserting himself, if he's not pushing himself in his career. What you will find is that women become more dissatisfied if he's not, bringing the money home, right? So I find that as I've gotten older, there's more of an expectation from the man in my life to provide more and work harder, right? So that I can step back and just take a break. So I want a man to communicate, right? To be emotionally intelligent. So I want him to be able to validate me more, to say, okay, sit down, let's talk about this. I hear you. I understand how you feel. How can I make this better for you? Because now at this stage of our lives, we are much more about more meaningful conversations, deeper conversations. And so when a man doesn't do that, when a man is being emotionally lazy, this is something that can be frustrating too. And so if you're a man and you're trying to understand how you can love your wife better, one of the best things that you can do is to lead, right? Lead her, understand her, be emotionally intelligent, you know,